Now wait a while, she would always say, as she pushed her glasses to her head and further examined her cards. Then she would pick up and lay down, in what seemed to be the blink of an eye, a winning hand. I always watched my granny closely as she played cards, to perhaps one day see what she could see while playing. My sister and I spent hours learning new games, laughing and playing the whole time through. What great memories. Life was not always fun and games for my granny, who lived a life full of happiness, heartaches, and hardships. A fulfilling life was lived by my granny, and with every fulfilling story, there is a beginning that commences a story of someone's life. Claire Ann Doris Selecky was born June 21st, 1932, in Glen Lyon, Pennsylvania. She had two siblings, two older brothers, being her only siblings. Claire lived during World War II, and her father was a coal miner. During World War II, Pennsylvania and West Virginia were the two combined states that made for almost half of the coal produced during the war. Coal mining was a very dangerous job, and a lot of fatalities occurred. But to make ends meet, a good father would do whatever he could for his family, to put food on the table. Even though they were very poor, they remained happy. Claire even got to meet the man she would eventually marry, who lived just down the street from her. Claire became good friends with Carol, who lived just down the street. Carol was sisters with John, who Claire despised. Carol was also sisters with Medar, who was 10 years older than Claire, but Claire had a crush on. As Claire got older, she slowly became more fond of John. They decided to date, and after 10 short months, they got married. With every healthy marriage and a desire between husband and wife, they decide to bring children into the world, and that's exactly what they did. The first child of Claire and John Selecky was Joni. Followed by Joni, in just 10 short years, were 6 more children. They had 5 girls and 2 boys. The 5 girls were named Joni, Margaret, Annie, Elizabeth, also known as Betsy, and Mary, and the 2 boys were named Philip and James. Sadly, Claire and John did not remain married, and they got divorced. All of the kids who still lived at home, with some being away at college, remained living with Claire. Claire received child support up until my grandfather died at the age of 51. Then she had to fend for herself and make sure food was provided for her children on her own. She cleaned homes and did odd jobs, but they were very poor and food was very sparse. As time went on, her children grew up, moved out, got jobs, and got married. Just as her and my grandfather had their children, her children began having children. And she no longer was just a mother, but now a grandmother, and in her case, a granny. The first child of Claire to have a child of her own was Annie, my mom. The baby's name was Holly. My Aunt Betsy recalled my granny, saying, "Wow, I'm going to be one of the youngest grandparents I know." My aunt quickly replied, "No, you're not. 58 is old." Followed 13 months later was Claire's second grandchild, me. After my sister and I, only 2 other children of Claire had children of their own, Philip and Mary. Altogether, Claire had a total of 7 grandchildren, the same amount of grandchildren as she had children of her own. A woman like Claire is not someone who is easily forgotten. A part of her lives on in her children and her grandchildren, and are reminded of her often. Today, you got to know the childhood of my granny, how she met my grandfather, mothering 7 children, and being a granny herself. What I remember the most about my granny is card games. Cards were my granny's thing. She taught me just about all I know today when it comes to playing cards. She was good at it, and a little bit of her got to rub off on me. She would always watch me closely after she taught me a new game to make sure I was playing correctly and to make sure I didn't miss a big move. She taught me to see the bigger picture and to not just look at one card, but instead of all of the cards together as a whole. It is a trick I have now applied to my everyday life, and not just when it comes to playing cards. Many things remind me of her. I think of her often. Now I just have to wait a while until I can perhaps one day see her again. And that is the life of Claire and Doris Selecky. Thank you.